Alright guys, welcome back to another video here. This time I'm going to do something a little different than my normal Diablo content. I've been playing a lot of classic WoW lately with the new season of Discovery, and I wanted to just make a video about something that's pretty controversial, but I think needs to be said. It's of course about the Gdkp loot system. So if you're not sure what that is, so in classic WoW, you have loot systems, determines who gets loot. Gdkp is like the most popular one in the last couple years for a number of reasons. It stands for Gold Dragon Kill Points. And yeah, so just going to jump into this. I think everyone should be doing GDKPs. If you haven't yet, stop wasting your time and start doing them. I'll give you a lot of reasons why. If you're a raid leader or a player and you're not GDKPing, you really, hopefully this video will help you understand why you should be. And if not, you can keep doing what you're doing, but it's not optimal. So we're going to take a look at all the existing loot systems that are pretty common in classic WoW. Obviously not every single loot system, but the ones that you will see. From the perspective of just a regular player who is logging in, trying to just get their lockouts done, get some gear, and also for raid leaders and guild masters. So people who put the raids together and put all the effort into it and make them happen. We're going to be looking at the pros and cons of all of them, and kind of going through the important stuff. This is not going to be like an instructional video on like how to do these loot systems or anything, or how to GDKP. It's just going to look at like the effects of it. Hopefully by the end you'll be convinced to switch to GDKP, or if you have some sort of negative view about the system because you're just on Reddit all day. Either way, I'm just going to lay out the facts and you guys can decide. I mean, it's a bit of a biased video because I do GDKP from now on, but I have done every loot system as both a player and a raid leader and a guild master. So yeah, I'm going to address the elephant in the room too about gold buying. So obviously the main argument with GDKPs is that they encourage gold buying, and the answer to that is yeah, they do. However, removing GDKPs, like if Blizzard banned them tomorrow, you would not eliminate gold buying. It might make things a little less ridiculous or slow down the inflation that you see in these classic era servers, but it's not going to have a huge impact like these people think. Like, oh, if we just ban this system, everyone will just stop buying gold. No. Reality is that a lot of people play this game a lot differently than they did years ago, and a lot of people have a lot of disposable income now, and so they're buying gold to save time in game. This is just human nature. You're never going to stop it. Every game has this problem with paying to win. So I really don't like just a blanket statement that GDKPing is the source of all the gold problems in the game. It's not. It actually fixes a few of them. Okay, another disclaimer. So I have to mention it because someone's going to comment about it, but everything I'm saying in this video applies to 99.9% of the player base. The top 0.1% of players who are speedrunning and going for world first clears and progression on new content when it releases, that's a totally different experience than what the majority of people will experience. And so none of the stuff I'm saying really applies to those players, okay? I've been in that type of guild, I've been that type of player, and the best system for that is always loot council, and there's no way around it. So they also just do things differently. So anyways, a little backstory on who I am and why you should listen to me and why I have some credibility in what I'm saying. I'll just go through this pretty quick. So I've been playing WoW since 2004 as a kid and a teenager up until MOP. In MOP and WoD is when I started raiding seriously and mythic raiding. I played Legion as well, and I quit in BFA because the game wasn't fun anymore. I started playing private servers around that time. So I was on Elysium, I was on Lights Hope, Turtle WoW when it first came out. There was a TBC one, I think it was called Nightwing, I played on. It's kind of hard to keep track and remember everything, but Yeah. But I played a lot of private servers, a lot of vanilla. I was really hyped for vanilla. I never raided in it when I was a kid. Um, so I played on launch when Classic launched up until phase two. I was in a DKP guild that was like been around since vanilla, and I had some fun. I played a mage. I really wanted like the Classic experience, right? Like DKP, Classic WoW, getting yelled at by a raid leader, all that. Um, cool. So I got burnt out in phase two and was doing some school stuff, and I stopped playing. But then when COVID lockdown happened, I came back with a bunch of friends. We started a guild. There was a complete saga that lasted until Nax. We cleared through all the content, tons of drama with things. Learned a lot of things along the way about people. Guilds merged into us. We merged into other guilds. There was like hostile takeovers, people writing manifestos, all kinds of crazy shit on the Discord, and it was just a great time in general. And then TBC launched. The guild kind of started with TBC, but a lot of people just quit during like phase one, right when it started, when you had to grind all those reputations out by just doing the heroic dungeons over and over. And the guild kind of fell apart. People just didn't like TBC and kind of stopped playing WoW. I stopped running a guild in TBC, and I joined a Cozy, which was like the rank 1 speedrun guild in North America at the time. I got rank 1 best in the world on High King Mulgar on my Shaman as enhancement. Like highest DPS, it was like a 16-second kill time. I got like 99s and 100s across the board. We did parse runs, we did speed runs, and it was pretty fun, but I wasn't playing with my friends, so again, I just kind of got burnt out and it just wasn't fun, so I stopped playing. We played Somme. I ran a guild in Somme with one other friend, and we were in the top 5 in phase 1 for progression and speed, and we also had a few rank 1 in the worlds for a couple of the bosses for a couple weeks there until we got surpassed. And then if you played Somme on Jom Gabar, you'll know that sometime around Christmas time, more than like half the server got banned for account sharing because everyone was trying to get rank 14. There was also rampant gold buying that carried over from Classic WoW, which became a huge problem near the end of it. And Blizzard actually banned like everyone who bought anything. I didn't buy any gold, I didn't get banned, but about half my guild did, and the guild just kind of fell apart because no one could raid. And by the way, almost every guild on the server had this issue. For about 2 weeks, people just stopped raiding until people got unbanned. But anyways, I got a new job and I kind of quit playing. Then I came back for Wrath. I did phase 1. Wrath's kind of bad. I don't like it. And now I'm back for SOD. So, over this time, I've used every loot system as a raid leader and as a player. And so I'm going to just try to give you my insight on what the problems are and what the solutions are. So you've got a couple of loot systems that are pretty common. First one is main spec over off spec. So this is the spec. This is the one everyone's aware of. Basically, when you're in it, it's the same as when you're in a dungeon. When something drops, if it's something you can use for your main spec, you roll need. If nobody needs it, you just roll greed and vendor it, right? So that's one spec, one loot system. Second one is loot council. I'm sure you've heard of that one too. Pretty common. This one, basically a few people or one person in the guild decides exactly who gets what based on their opinion. Then you have soft reserve systems, which are for kind of like pugs. They're the main spec, off spec system. However, you get to soft reserve 1 item or 2 items sometimes, or even 3 if it's really scuff. And if that item drops and you've soft reserved it, no one else has, you just get the item like you would in a loot council. If 2 people or more soft reserve the same item, you roll it off. So you kind of just pick an item that you really want or strategically and go for it. Then you have DKP, of course, which is basically a fake currency that the guild leader or guild master assigns points to players for different activities. So for showing up for raid, having consumes, having buffs. It could be anything. They could award DKP for whatever they want. It's like their own little microeconomy. And then you spend those points on items when they drop. And there's a whole bunch of variants on that to make sure that like certain things don't happen, but it's still not perfect. Then you have Epgp, which is like One I honestly haven't used a lot. I used it a little bit when we merged with another guild, and it uses an add-on, and it takes a quotient of your effort points divided by your gear points, and it's basically like DKP without DKP. And in essence, you earn effort points for doing stuff for the guild and being on time and just being a good player, basically. And then your gear score is, or your gear points is how much gear you've actually gotten. And so it's a way of smoothing out the gear so that the people who deserve it get it. But again, it's not perfect because you'll have instances where people are equal or close and they make a call, and yeah. And then there's Gdkp, right? And so Gdkp, basically, it's very simple. When an item drops, you bid on it with gold, and if you are the top bidder, you get the item and you pay the gold. And then everyone does that till all the items are gone. And at the end of the raid, the amount of gold that is accumulated from people buying items gets divided and dispersed back to the raid. And sometimes they take a cut if they're running it, like 10%, or sometimes there's a bonus cut for top DPS or something like that to incentivize things. Those are the loot systems at a glance. So now I'm gonna just go over things that are like issues, right? So these are like common issues that raid leaders or anyone trying to put together a raid is gonna like face, right? These are like what we're trying to solve here. So like number one, do you have what it takes in general to complete the raid? Nobody wants to go to a raid and not complete the raid, because that means that your lockout is burned and you didn't get all the loot opportunity that you could have got. No guild leader or no one running any raid wants this to happen, because as soon as it does, player morale goes down, people leave, they start looking for other guilds. That's just how it is. So you have to complete the raid. If you don't complete the raid, like, it's a huge bad, and it doesn't look good. Second one is like, which classes do you bring? How do you deal with like having more of a certain class? Like, let's say you've got 4 hunters in your guild that sign up, and you only need 2. So like, how do you decide who comes and who doesn't come? Becomes kind of a logistical nightmare, because you're always trying to get the right players, but if you don't have enough players, you'll just take who you can. Which players have gear, which ones don't need gear. All these things you have to consider when you're putting together a raid. Another big one is like, are your raiders using consumables? Are they enchanted? Are they actually playing their characters properly so that you're not wasting people's time? Are they bringing world buffs? And how do you convince your players to do all this? And a lot of people will just market themselves as, oh, we're semi-hardcore or whatever the fuck that means, and that means like, oh, you're expected to bring these things. But like, how do you enforce it? Like, if someone doesn't come with world buffs, what do you do about it? If they're not consuming, what do you do about it? These are all decisions you have to make as like a leader. Next is like, are your clear times good? Like, are your raids like 3 hours? Are people upset? Are they happy that the raids are fast? That's another thing. If your raids are slow because of problems, like, people are going to leave, and you're going to have problems getting them to come back and doing the raid the next week. How do you deal with people leaving? That's another one. Like, if someone leaves halfway through your raid, how do you fill that spot and complete the raid? When people do get gear, how do you prevent them from just leaving your guild or your group and joining a better raid after they've gotten the gear? That's another huge problem with running guilds, is that you gear up people and then they're gone, and it's like, okay, that's great, I just put in all this effort raiding for like 3 weeks, and this one guy got all bissed out, and he had a little argument with someone, and now he's gone, and it's like the guild and the raid as a group is now behind. And that's going to make other people upset and probably want to leave too. So how do you prevent that from happening? How do you prevent people from just stopping playing the game when they have their best gear? Like, let's say, yeah, maybe the guy doesn't leave the guild, but maybe he's like, all right, I'm not playing anymore. I'm playing Overwatch or, League of Legends or something, and I'm not coming to raid. And you got other people who've been raiding, and they didn't get the loot, and they still want to raid, and now it's like, oh, wow, we gave all this guy all this gear, and now he doesn't want to play. Huge problem, especially in Nax and Classic. How do you prevent poaching? So if you do have good players who are parsing well, other guilds are going to message them all the time. If you don't think that happens, you're living in a dream world. Happens all the time. Eventually, on every server, all of the best players will end up in one guild because people who play well don't want to play with bad players. Because the people who are playing well are interested in parsing and doing things quickly and getting high ranks on Warcraft logs or whatever. That's what motivates them to play, and they're not going to play with people who aren't interested in that. So you don't want to just play with bad people because then you're not going to have fun. So how do you prevent that? Guild banks, another thing. So raids like Molten Core, a lot of the stuff drops that isn't items, like the lava cores. They're worth a lot of gold. There's a lot of dark iron in there. There's skinning with the core hound leather. All kinds of stuff in these raids. How do you justify taking all those items and keeping them for yourself as a guild leader, and having it in a guild bank? How do you distribute that? That's another logistical headache. How do you decide who's allowed to roll on what gear? Like, let's say a gun drops and it's a DPS upgrade for your hunter, but it's a stat stick for the warriors. It's the best in slot stat stick for the warriors, but the hunter hasn't gotten a new ranged weapon in 6 weeks because he's just unlucky or something. How do you decide that? You're going to have drama no matter what decision you pick, and there is a correct decision there. You give it to the warriors, but you're going to have loot drama about that, and you have to have a plan to deal with that. All of these issues, I'm bringing them up because the loot system that you choose will either make these issues worse for you or make them non-existent. So let's jump into the nitty-gritty now. We're going to talk about main spec over off spec. The pros are it's easy to pug. Everyone understands the system. It's very not much of a commitment. It's we're just trying to get the raid done. Sure. So that's a good pro for it, for sure. Normally you have a chance to get any gear in the game that drops in that raid, which you wouldn't normally in other systems in a main spec over off spec. Unless people are hard resing stuff, which is what always happens when people run a main spec over off spec. And so let's say you're running MC and it's main spec over off spec. Well, if you're running that and you're the tank, you're not going to let someone have Thunder Fury bindings, or you're just an idiot, right? You're wasting your time. So you're going to hard reserve those, and that means that you're going to have a really hard time getting other tanks to join who are warriors, because they want the Thunder Fury too. So that becomes an issue. But okay, another pro, the low overhead to run. Item drops, you either master loot it and have people roll, or you just let people roll with the built-in Blizzard rolling system. That's main spec over off spec pros. The cons are obviously, and it's a huge con, you have absolutely no control over the loot. It is 100% gambling your time. You may never get loot using this system, and you might get all the loot. And the loot does not go to who deserves it. And I'm going to say that in quotes because, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, that's a huge con. It's easy to get griefed if you aren't using Master Looter. Someone could just need something just because it's purple. It feels really bad when you don't win a roll, or you lose rolls multiple times in a row because it feels like there's nothing you can do about it. And there's also no buy-in from your player base. So if you're just a guild running MS over off spec, good luck keeping people in your guild. It's just a revolving door, and it doesn't solve any of the issues we went over earlier. Next one we're going to look at is loot councils. So loot council is way more involved. The pros of it are that you have complete control over the loot. You get to decide exactly where the loot goes, who gets it, and when they get it. And you can attempt to solve a lot of the issues we brought out. Like in a loot council guild, you could decide to not give someone 2 pieces of loot. So if someone wins something and something else drops, you could decide to give the second piece of loot to someone else so that everyone gets something, and you prevent people from getting stacked and quitting the game or getting poached. That's a huge pro to loot council. Another pro is that there's not much drama in terms of when an item drops, because a good loot council will have a spreadsheet that tells you exactly who's getting it next, and if people don't like that, they just don't raid with you. Or they, if they're not aware of that you made that spreadsheet, then that's just their fault, right? That's the only pro. Now the cons are it's highly involved. Running a loot council is like, if a raid's going to take you 2 hours, add another hour onto that outside the raid, figuring out who the hell's getting what. And then you've got, officers if you're not going to do it all yourself, and then there's like officer drama over who's getting what, and people disagreeing on where things should go. And then the other one is, the huge con with this system is the drama. Like, no matter how well you run your loot council, at some point somebody will make a big fuss, and it could lead to 5 or 6 people just leaving your guild, and or the whole guild can just fall apart if you make a decision people just don't like. Even if your decision is maybe correct, it doesn't matter. The people you're playing with need to believe it's right too. And if they don't, and they don't want to do it anymore, they think you're scamming them or giving favoritism or giving your girlfriend loot or something stupid, that can happen, and then your guild's gone and you're back to square one. So that's loot council. Also, you can't pug in a loot council guild, because if people aren't in the guild and they're being given loot, why should anyone stay in your guild, right? It just doesn't make any sense. And so running a loot council guild has a lot more challenges, because you need to over recruit and make sure you have way more people than the raid demands, so that you never have to fill with random pugs, because that's just too much drama to deal with usually. And when you do that, you create other problems, because then people are not always raiding with you. So if you're in a guild as a player and like it's a loot council guild, and you only get the raid every other week, you have to find your own raid every other week, that can be annoying, and you don't want to deal with that. So you're just not going to join that guild, or you're going to leave like a month into it. Big problems with loot council. But again, I said at the very beginning of the video, loot council is the way to go if you're speedrunning, because that type of environment, nobody should care where the loot's going, because it should be going to the correct place, like mathematically, and there shouldn't be any drama, because those types of players, most of the time they have like 4 or 5 of the same class race combination, and they're running the raids multiple times to try to RNG it to get the best gear, and then they run with whatever characters get the best gear. So it's just not really something to compare. Next is Gdkp. So the pros of Gdkp are that it's kind of fun. It's its own little system. It's very like classic WoW in a sense that, you had the Onyxio wipe video and the guy saying you lose 50 Gdkp again, and it's very synonymous with like WoW. Even though it came from EverQuest. But it's a great system for that reason. It's also pretty close to the cons for loot council, in that you can't really control where the loot goes, but you can put systems in place to benefit the raid, so that the raids are going to be, hopefully done well. And then the players who make that happen get more Gdkp, they get loot, so they want to stay in the guild. Another huge pro to the Gdkp system is that it's a longevity sort of thing. It's a lot of player buy-in. They're very committed. If you have a bunch of Gdkp in a guild and you lose, your Gdkp is gone. It's worth nothing anywhere else in the game, because it's just imaginary currency. So you can keep players in your guild by Gdkp. Like, let's say someone's raiding for like a month or 2 and they don't have anything dropped that they really need for whatever reason. They're just amassing all this Gdkp. They're not going to leave, But in a different guild where someone's just not getting loot, they might leave, because whatever, they're pissed off, they're emotional, they're humans, and they might be gone. But in a Gdkp guild, they'll probably stick around and tough it out, because they don't want to lose that currency that they earned, right? Cons are it's even more time consuming to run a Gdkp system. You have to have a bunch of add-ons or websites. You have to keep track of everything very minutely. You have to make sure you make no mistakes, because people will be saying, oh, I should have this much Gdkp, but I don't, or I was on time for raid and I didn't get my +5 from last week. or this guy was late. You get all kinds of drama around it, and some people enjoy that, but it's just a lot more time involved. It's the most timely loot system of them all for how much effort it takes to make it run properly. Yeah, another huge issue with DKP is pugging. So again, if you've got 38 people, you need to get 2 pugs for the 40-man raid. How the hell do you deal with that? Like, how do they get loot? You can't just give them DKP. You can't say, oh, you have to wait because these guys have more DKP. No one's going to join your run if they're not going to get loot. And then, if you're constantly pugging and like you're not actually really using the DKP system fully, people are going to look for a different guild that's using it fully. It just becomes very hard to manage. So that's the big con. Another big issue with DKP is that you, let's say if you've got too much of one class, you have to bench people, and then they don't get to earn DKP because they didn't go to the raid. And then, no one wants to do that. No one wants to be benched on some rotating schedule. If they're in a raid and you're on a team, you want to raid every week, man, and it should be based on how good you are. But in a system like DKP, it's not. So yeah, Epgp, again, I didn't really use this system too much, but it's kind of the same as DKP, except there's less overhead involved. The app or the add-on kind of handles it all, and you really only have to make decisions when things are close. I'm not going to talk much about it because I don't know much about it. It's not a popular system. And lastly, Gdkp. So what are the pros of Gdkp? Because I'm such a shill for it over here. So the biggest pro is that you're going to get paid for your time always. So a huge issue with WoW is, well, not a huge issue, but something that pisses players off. And if it doesn't piss you off, I don't know what's wrong with you. But, if you spend all this effort and time raiding and you've got your character and you've been, even if you're not like a serious player, like you had to level the max level and get like enough gear to actually show up to the raid and maybe read a little bit about what the fights do. Maybe not in Classic because it's all super easy, but you're putting this effort in and you're gonna raid for like, let's say an hour, if like for MC, or if you're a slower guild like a dad guild, everyone's drinking beer and yelling at their wives, like 2-3 hour raid. Your time's kind of, it's not that important because you're playing WoW, but you don't want to, get nothing for your time, right? So in a Gdkp run, you will always get something for your time. Even if you don't get the items that drop, you will get gold. And gold is the universal solvent in Classic WoW. Gold is everything. Gold can buy you boosting, gold can buy you summons, gold can buy you items to level alts so that it's super fast to level. Obviously all your enchants are going to cost gold. In Classic WoW, consumables are a huge thing and they're not cheap. So you're going to, you want to farm gold to buy your consumables every week, or do you want like that to just be covered by the fact that you are raiding? And there's best in slot items. There's items that are hard to get, like Skull Flame Shield, if you want to, do some AoE farming on your paladin, or you just think it's a cool ass shield. Like, yeah, those are going to be 1,000 gold. And if you're just gonna go farm gold the traditional way or flip on the auction house, it's going to take you a lot of time. GDKPs, you're always going to get paid gold for your time. So that's the first and foremost best pro I can give you, is that you're never wasting your time. The second major pro with GDKPs is that they are the easiest raids to manage and run as a guild leader or as someone who's raid leading. Okay? And so there's a few reasons for this. The first reason is that in a Gdkp, you have access to the entire player base of the server. And what I mean by that is, if there's a guild on your server that has the best players in it, and they're very good at the game, and they're just serious players, they're going to have alts, okay? And they're going to go play in pugs, and they're usually going to go play in GDKPs, which means that if you're just some average player, and you want to see the raids get done really quick and see play with the best players, you have no chance of playing with them other than in a GDKP. They're not going to go to some random soft reserve thing because they value their time. They're going to be GDKPing, and so when you're putting your group together, you're going to have good players potentially if you look for them. But in another system, you'll never have them unless you are the best guild. In which case, this video isn't for you because you're not the average player. But this is for the average player. Okay, so that's number two. The quality of players are just way higher. Okay, the third one is if someone leaves the run. Okay, like let's say you're in the middle of MC and like two guys leave, and they're tanks, and it's like, oh shit, now what do we do? We can't even do the rest of the raid. We got to find tanks, and no one wants to join like a half lockout and deal with whatever weird loot system you're using. In a GDKP, it's very easy to just have someone jump in because, if you lose a tank halfway through MC and they jump in, well, they get a full cut of all of the items that are getting bidded off. They might not be able to bid on the items that drop before they join the raid because the game won't let them, but they're going to get gold for it. So to them, in that situation, it doesn't matter that half the raid's done. It's actually better for them because maybe they don't need anything off the first half, and they're still going to get the full payout. Or the total opposite. If you start a raid with 40 people, but you don't actually need 40 because it's easy content, well, guess what? You just don't fill those two slots, and everyone plays a little better, and you get the raid done, and then everyone gets more gold because the cut at the end is between 38 players instead of 40. So nobody's upset about that. It doesn't cause a problem. In some cases, it's a good thing. So that's another huge huge pro. Another pro, and this is kind of a weird one, but like basically if you're in GDKPs all the time, you do not have to buy gold. There's no pressure for you to buy gold, and there's no pressure for you to farm gold. So you just actually get to play WoW. You don't have to do all this other random bullshit to be able to play the game. Okay, like you don't have to go watch YouTube videos, figure out level of mage, figure out how to boost people, or go one pull Mara, or like, so that stuff's fun, sure, but like you're not required to do it. You're going to be getting enough gold to do whatever you need to do with it. The other huge pro is that you actually have access to every item in the game. Okay, MC bind or a Thunder Fury binding drops in a GDKP. You can bid on it, and you could potentially get it. That'll never happen for you as a regular player in any other loot system. So, yeah, that's a huge benefit for the average player. And also, gold's relative. So a lot of people will say that a big con for GDKPs is that, I'll never get the item that I want because someone will just be buying gold, and they'll win the item. Well, if that happens, let's just let's compare that to an MSOS thing. Okay, let's say a Viscag drops off Ani, and like you really like it. It's a great sword when it comes out. You roll on it and you lose the roll. It's like, oh shit, I lose the roll, that sucks. And you probably won't see another one for a while. If it drops in a GDKP and you're bidding and you get outbid by someone who bought gold, well, guess what? You get a buttload of gold because it's going to get bid up to whatever people's max gold is. So the people who aren't buying gold, who have been saving their gold from GDKPs, they're going to bid pretty high. You're going to bid high, and then the gold buyer is going to bid higher. And then guess what? You're going to have even more gold for the next time one drops, and that guy doesn't need one anymore. So, it's a great system for that reason. When you lose a piece of gear in a GDKP to someone else, you're getting more gold than you would have got. So you're not upset if items drop that you need and you don't get them. Another thing is, like, let's say you're a healer, and all this DPS gear is dropping. Normally in a regular run, you don't give a fuck. Like, who cares if other players are getting gear? Like, great, yeah, maybe your friend will get something, and you'll be like, yeah, nice, dude, good job, you got that. But in a for most of the time, it's just like, wow, I'm upset I didn't get any healing gear. But guess what? If the raid's full of pumpers and they're bidding up these items, and you're just going to get paid. So you don't care if none of your gear drop because it just means you're going to get paid more. And you'll have more gold next time when it does drop to bid on it. Another big pro to GDKPs is that they're very easy to pug. Um, Pretty much they're always a pug. Even if you run with a guild, um, you're not like if you're in a guild for GDKP, um, you're not entitled to raid spot, right? Like the raid leader will build the raid in a way, ideally, that has enough people buying gear for each slot, so that you don't disenchant stuff or delete it. So it's very easy to pug, and also you can go pug with someone else. Like there's tons of them popping off. Gold is the universal currency, so your gold in this guild is good in another guild. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's like it's a no brainer in that regard. So yeah, and another pro is that yes, people are going to buy gold in WoW, even if GDKPs don't exist. That's a fact. However, the people who are buying gold, you can benefit off them because they're buying gold and you're getting the gold that they're spending in a clean way. Blizzard doesn't ban people for getting cuts from GDKPs when someone buys gold. That's just not reality. There were some Reddit posts about it, but they're just not true. What happened was is that if somebody trades the guy running the run a bunch of bought gold, he might get banned. But not just players who aren't buying gold who are just in the run, right? You're getting traded gold from someone else. Once it changes hands twice and it's not your fault, Blizzard can't ban you for that. Because if they banned you for that, that would mean that if, let's say, you put an item on the auction house and someone bought it with gold that they bought, you would get banned for the same logic because it's the exact same thing. And they don't do that because that would be impossible to track. And it's not your fault. How would you know that someone bought gold and you're trading them an item for gold? You can't prove it. So they can't do that. And so, of course, there are some cons. Like, the big one is that people buy gold and sometimes you might not get your item. But it's not a huge problem because eventually you will get it and you do get some gold out of it when that happens. Okay? The second con is, it does take a little bit of extra time to do the raid. So when the raid's finished, usually that's when you do the bidding for all the items. That can take, depending on how big the run is, another 10, 15, 20 minutes even. Or if people have gold on their alts and they need to transfer it over, there's a bit more logistics involved at the end of the raid. Um, yeah. And as far as other cons go, there really aren't any. Like, it's the perfect system, and it's a reason. There's a reason why it's the most popular one. So people who have never done a GDKP, and I was one of them. In Original Classic, I was totally against it. I was like, oh, I'll never get gear. People are buying gold, and it'll just go to whoever buys gold. I'm not gonna, it's just a waste of my lockout. It's a waste of my time. But once you actually go and do one, and you realize, oh, I just made 50 gold for doing the raid. That's awesome. And oh, wow, so many of these pieces are just going for min bid. And I basically got three pieces of gear and I also got paid. Um, this is a better system. So yeah, just try it out. Go do one of your lockouts in a GDKP, and I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised. And when huge items do drop, like people go nuts. Like the mounts dropping in ZG, it's like you're so happy that you're in that run, even though you're not going to get maybe the mount. Um, I mean, you'd have the same amount of chance getting it in a regular run by just rolling. But yeah, when something crazy drops and you get a huge payout, like it feels pretty good. So yeah. Also, gold is everything in Classic WoW. So maximizing your gold, uh, ways to get gold is a super important part of the game. Because if you don't have a way to get gold and you're just, doing quests or farming or doing like the regular stuff, like you're gonna have a lot of time spent just trying to farm gold, trying to get your consumes, and you're gonna get burnt out, and it's not gonna be fun. With GDKPs, like you can make alts and just keep running them and just keep making money, doing the raids and doing the content. And another thing people say is like, oh, the people in GDKP suck and they're just bad players and they don't know how to play. Yeah, sometimes that happens, but that happens in regular raids too, so it's not really an argument. Another thing I haven't mentioned yet is in GDKPs you have different types of players. So you have carries. That's one type of player, and a carry is someone who doesn't need any loot and is just there to do the content and parse and get paid. So, tanks, DPS, it could be any role really, but if there's carries in the run, let's say there's two hunters, you're one of them, the other guy's a carry. I mean, he could upbid you on some of your items. That doesn't happen too often, but like if any hunter gear drops, it's going for you, man. Low, like for low. So that's a good thing for you if you're running a run like that. If you're in some other guild and there's two hunters, chances are you're not going to be playing with someone who's fully bissed out, because those people typically just stop playing the game or they go PvP and they don't raid anymore, because why would they? There's no reason to keep raiding once you have all the gear, except if you're doing GDKPs. Or speed running, I guess, but we're not talking about that. Then the other type of player is like, just someone who's buying gear, like a regular player who can pull their weight but is also looking for gear. And then there's like pure buyers, they call them, and these are players that basically they're not expected to do anything. They're like fresh characters. They're just going to sit at the entrance and they're going to buy all the gear that drops that they can use. And usually, a lot of the times, these are people who buy gold, yes, but other times it's people who have brand new alts and they want to gear them up quick. And, they've been running GDKPs on their main and they have a lot of gold and they don't need anything else. So, you get some buyers in your run. It makes a totally different dynamic, because now you're carrying, like actually hard carrying a couple players. And that can be pretty fun to optimize a raid for, and you're also going to get a ton of gold. I don't really think there's much else to say. It's pretty clear to me and a lot of people that GDKPs are the best system. And those of you who haven't tried them or who think they're bad, go try them, and I'm sure you'll change your mind. But even if you don't, it doesn't matter, because the majority of people are doing it anyways. Most of the game is being played this way, and you're just excluding yourself from what's going on. So that's up to you. But I thought I would just give some insight onto why Gdkp is the best system, and hopefully I did that. I kind of just rambled for however long this video is. And see you guys in SOD if you're going to play on Crusader Strike, but that's where we are. I'm also on Alliance too. So anyways, that's it.